All the engines on the island of Sodor love their work. But sometimes there's too much work. That's when the Fat Controller brings new engines to the island. One day, Thomas and Percy were taking the broken narrow gauge trucks to the steamworks. They have been involved with an accident with Duncan.
Phew, I don't want another morning like that, Thomas,
puffed Percy. Me neither, Percy, agreed Thomas. They never had trucks stuck up a cliff ledge before. Still, things can only get better.
No, it can't,
gasped Percy.
Look, there's 2 Bryans on the line. We've got now a railway with 2 Bryans.
Thomas chuckled and looked at the blue engine. Don't worry, Percy. That's not really Brian. That's a new engine. And there's the Fat Controller on the platform. He'll tell us what's going on. Thomas and Percy pulled into the station where Brian, the Fat Controller and the new engine was waiting. Ah, Thomas, Percy, right on time. The 2 engines looked at the blue tank engine. He looked similar to Brian, only blue and different letters and numbers. This is Dylan, said the Fat Controller. He's here to help Brian with shunting and pulling freight. Nice to meet you two, puffed Dylan politely. And also, added Brian, me and Dylan used to work together on our old railway a long time ago. He is actually my younger twin brother. Thomas and Percy were amazed. In that case, Brian, you will show him how to be a really useful engine when shunting in the yard today. No problem, sir, puffed Brian happily. But Dylan was worried. It's been a while since I handled trucks, he puffed worriedly. I hope I don't make a mistake. Don't worry, Dylan, puffed Brian confidently. Just think what we did in the old days. We worked together and showed the trucks to its boss, like this. But he was feeling too confident, and then he made a mistake. He bumped the truck so hard that they came off the rails. Brian came to a stop. Ouch! He cried. I can't move! His driver examined the damage. I think that bump has damaged your pistons. You can't move at all, I'm afraid. The Fat Controller was not impressed. But that will teach you to be careful, Brian. I'm afraid, Dylan, you'll have to manage the shunting by yourself. Yes, sir, puffed Dylan. He felt a bit worried, but he promised to do his best. Throughout the rest of the day, Dylan worked hard. He shunted trucks and even shunted Gorton's coaches for the express. And soon, all of the engines were beginning to like Dylan and started talking about him after they picked up their trains or talking at the sheds. And also, once Dylan had shunted them, the trucks knew better than to try tricks on him. At the steamworks, Brian was feeling miserable. Don't worry, Brian, my friend, puffed Victor. We'll soon have your pistons fixed in a few days' time. Then there was another crash. Oh, Kevin! How many times have I told you? You don't drop the loads, you lower them.
Sorry, boss. Won't happen again, boss. Just a slip of the hook, boss.
Why did I even hire him? Sighed Victor. Hi, Brian. I thought I'd better let you know how Dylan's getting on. He's doing your shunting very well. All the engines are beginning to like him. Yeah, but I could have done all the shunting, grumbled Brian sadly. Yeah, but he's doing a good job. You should be proud of him, puffed Thomas. You better watch out, Thomas, Brian huffed crossly, because he could end up taking over all my jobs. And then I'll be sent away for good. I'm sure that's not gonna happen, Thomas puffed. Just then, the Fat Controller arrived. Ah, Brian, I just thought I'd let you know how Dylan's getting on. He is doing a good job. All the work in the yard is moving fast, thanks to him, he said. So, I have decided that tomorrow, he could start pulling his first train, and when you're mended, you could help him. Brian couldn't believe it. Dylan was to take his own train? That made Brian very upset. Pulling trains was usually his job, even after all the shunting. Now he's sure to replace me, he puffed sadly after the Fat Controller left. Don't think that, Brian. Remember, you're really useful too, and what matters is being really useful in your own way, with your own jobs. Think of that. And Thomas puffed away. But Brian didn't think so to think about it. There's got to be a way to get rid of Dylan, and then I could prove to the Fat Controller what a really useful engine I really am. Then he stopped and smiled. And I think I know how to do it, he puffed. Brian had a naughty idea. The next morning, when he was mended, Brian found Dylan at the engine wash. It was time for him to put his plan into action. Oh, Dylan, could you do me a little teensy-wincy favour? He asked. Of course, Brian, my bro. What's up? Asked Dylan cheerfully. Well, the Fat Controller has a problem, he said. He's got a wife called Lady Hat, and she wants Sodor pansies. Dylan was puzzled. What are Sodor pansies? He asked. They're her favourite flowers. I promised I would look for them for him, but I'm too busy working at the yard. Maybe I could find them while I took one of your goods trains, suggested Dylan. Thanks, but you can only look for them in the mountains, so you need to keep an eye out. Oh, don't worry, I will. Brian sniggered. There's no way he'll manage to stop the trucks with him distracted, he puffed quietly to himself as he puffed away. Next, he went to find some trucks, which was going to be one of his trains. He found some which Dylan was going to pull. Can you keep a secret? He asked the trucks. Yes, they chattered. Will you bump the blue tank engine and tell no one I asked you? The trucks promised, and Brian puffed away. First he had to collect his own train, before heading off to the junction. That was the next stage of his plan. I've got to go faster, or Dylan's gonna get to the junction before me. Brian had to pick up some building materials and take them to Kellsthorpe Station. He looked around at the yard. He saw the trucks in front of him. Ah! These must be the trucks of building materials. I've got to hurry, he puffed. But he didn't know that they were the wrong trucks. They were full of paint and tomatoes. They were all mixed up to two trains, which two engines had to pick up. But Brian also didn't know that Scruffy was in front of the train. We'll have some fun with this engine, he said. Brian buffered up and hurried away as fast as he could. Brian clickety-clapped along the tracks. I've got to get to the junction before Dylan, or he'll take over my jobs for good. He was almost at the junction when Scruffy decided to pull his chance. On, he called to the trucks. On, they all cried, and they started pulling Brian faster and faster along the line. Oh no, I can't stop! Help! Cried Brian. They went down faster and faster. But there was more trouble. Thomas was coming on the opposite direction, pulling Dylan's trucks. On, they cried. Oh no, help! I'm gonna crash into Brian, cried Thomas. Luckily, the signalman changed the points, and Thomas diverted into a goods shed. But it wasn't cleared enough. And by the time Brian got to the junction, it was too late for him to stop, because the brake van was derailed and blocking his way. Paint and tomatoes splattered everywhere. Brian felt miserable. His plan was ruined and he had messed up again. Later, Dylan arrived. Bust my buffers! What a mess, Brian! He puffed. But the Fat Controller was on board. He did not look happy. What happened here? These trucks were pulling me. I tried to stop, but I was going too fast. He puffed sadly. But this isn't your train, Brian. It's full of tomatoes and paint, which is splattered all over the passengers. Oh no, I must have collected the wrong trucks. I was in a hurry. Why? Asked the Fat Controller. Because I wanted to get here first so I can stop Dylan from pulling my trains and take over my jobs for good, so that you wouldn't send me away. Oh, Brian, I'm surprised at you. Why would you think that? You've done so much good work on this railway, there's no need to throw you away, but why would you cause all this trouble? I just don't want to give Dylan my jobs, Brian puffed sheepishly. But I don't get it, added Brian. Dylan was supposed to pull those trucks. Why is Thomas pulling them? That's because I called him to Knapford Station before he took his train, said the Fat Controller. It turned out there was another job for Dylan. We're going to do a Sodor Railway training video for new entrants in the future, and I need him to help. Another entrant is coming soon, so I need them two to help out with this video when the camera crew start filming next week. That's right, said Thomas, so I had to take his train instead. Dylan was surprised, and he felt very upset. I didn't mean to upset you, Brian. I just want to be part of a railway. I thought we were going to be sharing the work like we did on our old line. But you must have changed. You have changed. You're no fun at all, he puffed miserably. Brian felt worse than ever. Thomas was all covered in tar and feathers from the trucks he had crashed into. The passengers were splattered with paint and tomatoes. The track was a mess, and worst of all, Brian had upset Dylan. No, wait, everyone. What is it, Brian? Asked Thomas. Oh, feathers in the mouth, he grumbled. I've been really silly, and I'm sorry, sir. I made up the story about the flowers, and I tricked the trucks into bumping Thomas. I thought I meant for them to bump Dylan, but they must have got Thomas. I shouldn't have trusted trucks. But, Dylan, maybe we can share the work. Can we? Asked Dylan. Yes, Brian puffed. If I clear up the mess, maybe you could do one of my jobs, taking the building materials to Kellisthorpe. That could be your test run. Really? Dylan puffed. You want me to do one of your jobs? Of course! Now get going. There's no time to lose. Now that, Brian, is a very good idea, said the Fat Controller. Even Thomas had to agree. So while Brian cleared up the mess, Dylan took Miss Goods' train to Kellisthorpe. And when the mess was cleared, Brian helped Thomas out. He wasn't hurt, but he was all covered in tar and feathers, so he could do with a good clean. And after that, Brian and Dylan worked together in the goods yards and even pulled goods trains together. And you know what? They got on well and managed the load easily.